Hey everybody, this is Jim from Top Jimi Profiles. Today we're going to demo the Top Jimi LED pack for the Kemper Profiler. Time to make some noise. As most of you watching this are probably aware, Led Zeppelin I was recorded using primarily a Telecaster and a Supro combo amp. The exact specification of the Supro amp is a bit mysterious. Nobody seems to know exactly what it was, other than it was a small combo and the original 10-inch speaker was replaced with a 12-inch speaker. So Supro capitalized on this interest by coming out with the Black Magic combo, I think in collaboration with Jimmy Page. But what they did for this amp was put in a 12-inch ceramic speaker, and they modified one of the gain stages to have additional gain beyond what it would have normally had. So that's all great, except that it sounds nothing like Led Zeppelin I. So the biggest issue is the speaker. I have no idea who made the speaker that's in this, but I ended up trying some different speakers and settled on a 1962 Jensen P12R, which is a relatively low-powered Alnico speaker from back in the day. Sounds sweet and sounds really good paired with this. Sounds like Led Zeppelin I. And this is also a two-channel amp, so I mentioned one of them has a lot of gain. The other channel, I assume, is stock to what they would have had back in the day. So if you plug into that channel and dime the volume, voila, Led Zeppelin I. Sounds pretty darn good. So buy one of these, put in an old Jensen speaker, and you'll be in business. So Jimmy occasionally used this rig beyond Led Zeppelin I, most notably for the magical solo on Stairway to Heaven. And for soloing in general, throughout his career in the studio, he would oftentimes use a tone bender like this one to give extra gain and sustain for the solos. So around Led Zeppelin II time frame, Jimi discovered Marshalls and started using them pretty much exclusively on stage and a lot in the studio. Specifically, I think it was a 1967 Marshall Plexi, 100 watts. So this is basically a JTM 45 with a couple extra output tubes to get you 100 watts or more. This thing is brutally loud. It's the loudest amp I own, but it's also one of my favorites because the tone is just so sweet. So this is the Jimi Hendrix reissue from Marshall, based after one of his surviving amps. These originally came with KT66s, so that's what I have in this. You pair this with the right vintage greenback speaker and it's tonal nirvana. People, I think, mistakenly assume he had modified Marshalls, but he didn't mod his amps until after Zeppelin. I think it was mid-80s or so. Put in KT88s and increased the output power. But if you want Zeppelin, this is what you need. Well, Jimmy Page was wildly inventive in the studio when it came to getting guitar tones. He used everything seemingly under the sun. Take, for example, Black Dog. What a fantastic Les Paul into a Marshall tone. Well, that's what I thought, but actually he just ran his Les Paul right into the studio console through a couple compressors. No speaker at all. I don't have a vintage tube studio console, but I do have this old Sun Coliseum PA head, which is relatively close. Not a ton of gain, but it's voiced kind of like a clean channel. So I ran into this, dimed it, and grabbed the tap before it got to the speaker. Sounds pretty close. Another example of Page studio weirdness was Whole Lotta Love off Led Zeppelin II. I always assumed that great guitar tone was Les Paul into a Marshall. Well, I was mistaken again. Turns out it was a Vox 7120 head, is what people seem to think it was, which is a solid state preamp into a KT88 tube power section. Well, I don't have one of those. I have no idea where you would even find one. They're not very common. So instead, I substituted the most basic tube preamp I have, which is this MXR Distortion Plus, and into, again, the Sun Coliseum head, which has a KT88 output tube section. And then for the solo on Whole Lotta Love, add in a tone bender and a wah. Yeah, pretty cool. Well, if you believe what you read on the internet, you would believe that you need, in order to get the Jimi Page tone, a 30-watt Celestion with a 55 hertz cone, the G12H30. This is known as the Page speaker from what I've seen, and I wasted a whole bunch of time trying to get Zeppelin tone using this speaker. Turns out this speaker has a much more scooped mid-range than you actually want, and it's also got a lot more bass. Page's tone has a lot of mid-range and not a lot of bass. So what I figured out was that's not the speaker he used. What he actually used was a 25-watt version, which was the stock speaker in Marshall bass cabs of the day. So this is a G12M 25-watt with the 55 hertz cone. This adds the mids you need and cuts the lows. So this is the actual Page speaker. So as always, everything you've heard in this demo was generated with guitar into the Kemper and nothing but the Kemper. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe and we'll see you next time.